Episode 67C, My Conflict with the Quebecois Separatists. Although Canada is another country, it is relatively nearby to Boston and to New England. So starting as a boy, I have had many trips to Canada. The following is one of those stories that go with my visits north. My conflict with Quebecois Separatists. In the late 1980s, my business was selling European-made industrial machinery replacement parts. My territory was worldwide. Most of my work was finding manufacturers who used European machines and paid the outrageous OEM prices for parts to repair those machines. Most of my sales efforts were to USA manufacturers, but there was also a market for my goods in Canada. I remember a summer business trip made to Quebec around 1982. Factories in Montreal and nearby eastern Quebec cities were my focus, but I had possible live one, that is a likely big sale in Sherbrooke, which was on my way home just north of Newport, Vermont. I arrived in Sherbrooke about 5 p.m. and checked into the very up-to-date Governor Hotel. The hotel's modern restaurant and bar was surrounded by glass walls and very bright with the late-in-the-day daylight. I went to the bar for a beer after check-in and sat near a group of maybe 6 or 7 well-dressed men about my age, speaking loudly in French. After a while, some of them noticed me and began a conversation about me amongst themselves, looking towards me with disdain. They were obviously drinking too much. Since I didn't speak French, I wasn't sure what was their problem. Finally, one of them came over to me and rudely asked me in French if I was an Anglo. Since I did not speak French, I answered them, and I said loudly in English that I heard the word Anglo, and was he asking me if I was an Anglo? Then the other men rushed over in a threatening way to my bar stool and surrounded me. I think they expected a wimpy response. When I spoke up, maybe they thought I might attack their interrogator. I was aware of the political situation in Quebec independence from Canada. I knew there had been some violent events done by a militant political group called the FLQ, so I was a little concerned with my safety. Also, the Parti Quebecois, run by René Lévesque, had held a referendum on Quebec sovereignty, but independence was defeated by the voters, so it was still a sore subject. So then my interrogator challenged me in English, asking me what was my opinion on Quebec independence. I realized I was a foreigner and in some danger, but I was definitely partial to other enemies of British hegemony. So I stood up, faced them, and took them to school. I told them that I was Les Irlandais, that is the French word for Irish. I asked if they knew the history of Ireland and the hundreds of years of British rule. I told them I had both American and Irish passports. I lectured them on the discrimination by the Brits against Irish Catholics in Ireland, and then again by the British-descended Brahmins against the immigrant Irish in Boston. I told them I was in favor of any former British colony peoples rebelling for freedom. Then I said, therefore, I am in favor of Quebec separation. They loved it. They loved what I said. They loved that I was in their corner. And they loved that I was not afraid to make my case. I think being forthright in knowing from whence you come and the history of your country and your family is a necessary thing. I proved it at that Sherbrooke confrontation. And I agree with my favorite Pope, John Paul II, when he said, many times, be not afraid. There's more Canadian stories on episode 67A and 67B. This is Rod Murphy. Thank you for viewing or listening to my podcast episodes. I really appreciate it. If you liked it, and if you so choose, I ask you to send a good review and or refer a friend who might be interested in this Old Boston podcast series. Again, my thanks.